Hi and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, I've kind of messed up a little bit. I'm in the process of doing a restoration that I, like normal, if you've been watching the show for a while, have gone down a rabbit hole. I'm actually doing a detailed restoration of a basher, the quality Armour Senton 6S that was discontinued a few years ago. And I've got carried away. I bought a load of parts and I thought I had enough. I've started restoring it and I've realised it's a lot worse than I thought. So I've managed to place an order for a load more parts so I can restore this properly, and they haven't arrived yet because I hadn't planned to buy them, but then I have. So I'm now in the position where I've got the whole back end of the car all laid out. And I can't go any further because I've bought a new rear diff housing, I bought new diff parts, I bought loads of bits centre diff, and I've kind of got this far. The problem I've got is everything is laid out, so I can't pack it all up because it's all laid out so I know what's going on and where everything goes. So I've restored the rear arms, that's done. But that's it until the parts arrive, which means my studio is now sitting here and I can't film anything else. So hopefully they're going to turn up. Got a brand new chassis waiting to go, so the idea is to build it all up and put it back on the chassis and work my way from the rear to the front. And that's where I've got stuck. Luckily, someone posted in a video I just released recently, which is the Traxxas TRX-1 that I've added to the collection, and they wanted to know what's the difference between the TRX-1 and the RC10 Team Associated Graphite. And did Traxxas actually copy Team Associated? Well, I happen to have both of those, but unfortunately we can't film that in the studio. We're going to have to film it downstairs in the kitchen on the kitchen table. So sorry, this video is going to be a bit rough and a bit random, but I wanted to give you an idea of exactly what's going on. And hopefully once those parts arrive, you're going to get a real detailed restoration of a classic 6S Senton. Until then, let's go take a look at those buggies. Right, so here's my two vintage buggies. The Team Associated RC10 Graphite. This is the early one, the non-stealth transmission version. Now, the stealth transmission came out on the Team's car in 89 to 91 was the development, and it was released to the public in 91. The Traxxas TRX-4 came out in 1991, so the actual Graphite had been out for quite a while, and then obviously there was the updated one with the stealth transmission that came out roughly in the same year. Couldn't find out the exact month as the TRX-1. So what's the same? Did Traxxas really copy AE? Well, we can take a good look. These are both vintage buggies. This is not the re-release one, so that should give us the realistic comparison between the two, as these are both vintage buggies. So we'll talk about the bodies a bit later on, but let's just have a quick look at the chassis. So looking at the front, they are very similar. The biggest difference between the two that I can see, and if you look at between the two, you can start to work out, Traxxas wanted to have bigger front shocks and a higher tower. Personally, no clue where they got that idea from. But if you look very carefully at this design here, it very much follows on exactly from how AE did it, just made it taller. The way that the tower is mounted is the same. The way that the arms are mounted are exactly the same. And the way that they are attached to the actual chassis are the same as well, just higher. That means that they've also went and integrated the body mount into the front, whereas the Team Associated one, it was a screw through, which kind of was left over from the RC10 days when it was the gold pan. Looking at the C-hubs, very much the same, as well as the swept-backed arms, again, the same. The wheelbase of the two cars looks to me to be pretty much identical. There might be a couple of mil in it, 1 mil in it or something like that, or 2 mil, but it's very close indeed. So obviously the biggest difference is the shocks The tie rods are exactly, the turnbuckles, sorry, they're all pretty much identical. Now, if I flip them round, we can see it for the other side, how it was all attached is very much exactly the same. Now, if we look at the steering, the main difference between the steering on the Team Associated one, the actual turnbuckles are attached to the actual arms. But the joint, and then there's a joint between the two, this is a bridge. Now, what Traxxas did is they took pretty much exactly the same thing, and then they've just put a bar that runs across the bottom instead of a bridge across the top, and then they've attached the steering turnbuckles to that rod, whereas the original one, they've attached it to the actual parts itself. So a slight upgrade in the TRX-1, but looking very similar. And then if you start to look at how the steering is all attached, it's basically identical between the two. The location, the way it's mounted to the chassis is exactly the same. So the front part is very close. So yes, you can tell it's obviously been massively influenced by the Team Associated. Then when we go to the battery location and the battery holding plate, very similar indeed again. The only thing that they've done differently is they've actually included the antenna mount into the actual mount for the battery, whereas AE had it as a separate little tiny bolt-on section. One thing they did do very differently then is the rear battery location is obviously part of the rear bulkhead on the AE, where they actually changed that and they had it as a standalone one, which is kind of interesting because they saved a part here and then added a part back here. But then I guess maybe it would be just too much of a copy to actually mount it inside that. I don't know. Obviously, this is all my own opinion. I'm just looking at them. So I honestly couldn't say. Let's look at the towers. Now, the towers are designed very much exactly the same. Bolted to the main bulkhead. Exactly the same on the Team Associated one. And then the turnbuckles and the turnbuckle mount locations where you can adjust them is basically identical. So that is, again, very much exactly the same. Now, if we turn them around, now this obviously, like I mentioned earlier, this is not my stealth transmission graphite, so this doesn't have the stealth transmission in it. So if we look at the rear of the two cars, the big one is, yes, obviously, Traxxas have just, that looks like a stealth transmission if ever I saw one. And then if we look at the motor mount, it's all very much identical. You know, obviously that this bit's been removed, and then they've gone down and just done a section here. So it's an evolution of that, but basically, yes. One thing that was quite interesting is the prop shaft. The prop shaft's obviously a bit different on this one. These are the metal ones, universals. Whereas on here, these look very familiar. So if anybody knows the old Cougars, the telescopic drive shafts, so that's one thing that's actually quite different between the two. This has got more of the Schumacher Cougar drive shaft. But then if we look at the rear hubs, they are basically identical design as well. The rear lower arms are very different, and the TRX ones are much more modern and much more sculpted. So that looks like a big difference really versus what was actually on the original graphite. So that was very different. Another thing that was actually different is the way that the spoiler is mounted. On the TRX, it's mounted to the tower, whereas on the graphite, it's actually just like it was on the RC10, where the actual spoiler sits into the actual tubes versus coming off it. So that was something that's very different. And the big thing that really did make them look very different is obviously the bodies. The Team Associated one is a bit more kind of like what you would expect, very similar to other releases that we got back then. Whereas when you look at the TRX, very different, gone much more aero slippery design, and that's what makes them look so different when they have the bodies on. But when you look underneath, things look very much the same. Another thing that's different is the TRX has an under tray, whereas the Graphite didn't. Now, the stealth transmission, like I mentioned before, was developed from 89 and released in 91, so they did have enough time. And being that it took so long for the stealth transmission to come out from AE, it was very easy for them to actually produce and put something very similar into it. So in my opinion, do I think Traxxas copied Team Associated? Let's just say they were heavily influenced. So there you go. Thanks so much. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.